Well, so I tried to look at the nice stone statues of the American presidents. Many of you may recognize them. I'm from University of Florida. So when I was talking on this topic, oxidative stress, nephrolithiasis, and chronic kidney diseases, I decided to look up the United Arab Emirates and what's the situation of different things. So here it is. A Dubai household health survey showed that 6.7% individual in Dubai have hypertension. 12.1% of those in the 40 to 59 age group suffer from the condition, while 1% of those above the age of 60 have this hypertension. Then, according to the World Health Organization, the UAE is number 2 in the world for prevalence of diabetes, with 19.5% of the local population suffering from the disease. We move to kidney stone. Now, I'm sure the people who are into the soccer, they will recognize Mr. Maradona. He's even now here. I mean, he had to come all the way from South America to have a kidney stone. When he was in Dubai, he had a kidney stone removed. But if you look at the chart on the side, you see that the number one, of course, with the nephrolithiasis is Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and the number 2 is United Arab Emirates. And somehow when you see this number 2 in diabetes, number 3 in hypertension, so, and this kind of a thing where people, when they're looking at, it seems like that kidney stone disease is associated with different diseases like hypertension, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, or quote unquote, the chronic kidney diseases. So on my talk today, I will say that this is not just chance that it is happening, that people end up having kidney stones and hypertension, diabetes, but there is a basic common cause. And that common cause, from my studies of the biology and experimental studies, and from epidemiological studies that others have done, I have come to the conclusion that oxidative stress that kidneys are under in one condition that can make the kidney susceptible to have the other disease. And that's what I will try to show the data about. So the first thing was that if you look up this particular paper, that was in 1965, when this was, I think, one of the first papers that talked about looking at the hypertension and the nephrolithiasis. They had 895 men, 50 years old, stratified by blood pressure into 4 groups. The prevalence of urolithiasis increased from 1.1% in the lowest blood pressure group to 13.3% in the subjects with the highest blood pressure. But the most important part was, from the same style studies, these 2 studies by Capuccio published in 1999, and the other from basically similar studies in 2001, what they found was the hypertensive subjects had a greater tendency to form stones. And then patients with a history of stones tended to develop hypertension. So what it means is it is not just a one-way street, that hypertension and kidney, but that hypertensive are prone to kidney stone formation, and kidney stone patients are prone to have hypertension. Then, of course, I am sure all of us know about the link between diabetes and nephrolithiasis. This particular study comes from the lab of a friend of mine, John Leesky, published in 2006, American Journal of Kidney Diseases, where they were looking at it, the prevalence, and they basically, it's an epidemiological studies, and they found very specific links of kidney stones with the diabetes mellitus, hypertension, obesity. And if you see some of the papers coming out of France, particularly by Dr. Daudon's group, there is no doubt, particularly the uric acid disease because it has a good influence on the pH. So that's one of those reasons. Then, of course, the same group from Mayo Clinic of John Lieske's group, they also looked at chronic kidney disease and nephrolithiasis. And in this particular chart, you can see the risk of kidney stones and risk of chronic kidney disease is somehow goes together. Then this is a very interesting study, very recently published in 2012 by Alexander et al. And they have their network data that is from more than 3 million people. And what they concluded, which is very interesting, even a single stone episode was associated with significant increase in likelihood of adverse renal outcomes, including ESRD. That's one single episode of a stone can damage the kidney. Then one of our chairs here, he published a study, and in there, what they show that if you treat the kidney stones, you actually are also improving other conditions associated with those patients. So the link, in my mind, is there, that one disease can lead to the other diseases. So all these epidemiological studies, and because of the brevity of time, I can't go into too many details, but here, if you look up there, these are the kind of relations: the hypertension, the nephrolithiasis, chronic kidney disease, diabetes mellitus, and of course, a big thing called obesity. There is link, some two ways, like nephrolithiasis and hypertension and diabetes, and some are just going in one direction. It doesn't mean, that means that kidney stones do not cause obesity. Obesity can cause kidney stones. So now my theory is that common cause between all these diseases is oxidative stress. And what is the oxidative stress? So the theory is the development of oxidative stress is a common theme in renal and cardiovascular diseases, including chronic kidney disease, diabetes, hypertension, nephrolithiasis, and I will show you the data on that. And it is our hypothesis that the production of reactive oxygen species is the common pathway, and their production is in one disease, if left unchecked, will lead to another. So what are the reactive oxygen species? These are the superoxides. They may come from so many different sources: lipid radicals, mitochondrial respiratory chains, NADPH oxidase, xanthine oxidase. I'm sure everybody is familiar with nitric oxide. But what happens is, in the end, that generally superoxides are made in the body because physiologically. And physiologically what happens is the superoxides are taken care of through superoxide dismutase, catalases, so many different enzymes. And in the end, as you noticed it, very harmless things like water and oxygen is made. But if it continuously keep happening, and then superoxides being made, but there is not enough superoxide dismutase or catalase or GPX or all those other things, what will happen is that there will be a condition called oxidative stress. And that oxidative stress leads to the oxidation of DNA, proteins, lipids, anything. All those things are damaged. So these reactive oxygen species and reactive nitrogen species have been implicated in the development of cardiovascular diseases, including hypertension, atherosclerosis, diabetes, cardiac hypertrophy, heart failure, ischemia, reperfusion injury. These important effects are due in large part to excess production of oxidants to decrease nitric oxide bioavailability and to decreased antioxidant capacity in the vasculature and kidneys. Now here is, for example, from current opinion nephrology and hypertension, the results of their studies. This is a review article. In the center is there a pointer in here somewhere? Yeah, this is basically a renal tubule, and this is a blood vessel. And there is this enzyme in the membrane, NADPH oxidase. Here are these superoxides are being made. But the part, what I'm trying, and this particular thing is very interesting. The things that are happening in the renal tubule affects what happens in the blood vessels. And particularly, it affects these parasites, which are these cells right outside that. And as almost all of us know this thing, that this blood vessels, that's where the hypertension starts. So what happens in the kidney renal tubules affect the vasculature. This is this is about the oxidative stress, in the diabetes. This is a very recent review in annual reviews of pathology and mechanism of diseases. They talk about it, how the development of reactive oxygen species and reactive nitrogen species activate a number of these signaling molecules, which in the end up in diabetic nephropathy. So I cannot go in detail into all these things, but you can actually check this paper out. But the part is that this is about the most recent review on the subject. So these things directly implicates for diabetic nephropathy. There is this particular thing is oxidative stress and atherosclerosis. Again, what is happening in atherosclerosis? There is the development here, particularly you see this thing. This is the eNOS, which is part of the nitric oxide cycle. There is a NOx, which is NADPH oxidase thing. There is a oxidation of LDL, which are taken up by macrophages. These things affect, and in the end up making the plaques in the atherosclerosis. And these are those plaques which are the unstable plaques responsible for causing all kind of heart diseases. Now, coming to the nephrolithiasis, oxidative stress, most of the work has actually come out of some of them from Thailand, some from China, some from Japan. And this particular study, I'm just showing you one, biochemical parameters and indices of oxidative stress and damage to renal tubules in plasma, erythrocyte, and 24-hour urine of renal stone patients and normal control subjects. These are the control renal stone patients. These are the markers of oxidative stress, and you can see, look at the p-value here. Extremely significant differences. And there's another study from the same group showing basically the same thing, that on one side, this is the marker of oxidative stress. On the other side is urinary NAG activity, which is, of course, as you know, is a marker of the renal tubular injury. This was one of the very interesting study, and this was published in 2007 in Journal of Clinical Laboratory Analysis. And what the authors did was they looked at all the markers of inflammations, which everybody agrees upon, and they looked at in the urine of the stone patient. And what they found is that almost every single one of the markers which is present in inflammatory diseases is found in the urine of stone patients. So the production of reactive oxygen species and the development of oxidative stress are common features of renal and cardiovascular diseases, including cardiovascular, diabetes, hypertension. Oxidative stress produced by one disease may lead to another under right circumstances. For example, mild hypercalciuria, hyperoxaluria, hypocitraturia, which under normal conditions may just be a curiosity or nuisance, can promote crystallization when cells are injured by reactive oxygen species produced by the comorbid condition. So this is one of those charts. When you look up there, nephrolithiasis, oxidative stress, chronic kidney disease, metabolic syndrome, obesity, all those, in the end, there is inflammation associated with it. And with it, thank you very much. This is, of course, alligator, which is, I'm from University of Florida, and the symbol of Florida is alligator. Thank you very much.